Let's talk herd.
The other day, one of the ladies that has a rescue, one of her horses has the melanomas.
Right.
And so she was saying, my brother's in hospice. My horse is probably getting closer. I just can't handle it if my horse goes, if they go at the same time. And I just very strongly suggested to her, please talk to your horse and ask your horse to, or ask and then trust that your horse will leave her body at the time that is the most beneficial for both of you, because there is an agreement, a soul agreement, right? Like she's had this horse forever, that we can, that she could trust that that horse will leave at the right time for everyone's highest good, because they're so bonded. It's not like I don't feel like I was telling her to force an agenda on the horse.
No.
I was just saying, sort of like, make it so. Decide that you have a strong enough soul connection that you can request that the horse transitions at a time that's going to be the best, and then trust that, so that you can let that go in the moment. All is well. Okay. All will be well.
It is empowering to just feel that you can ask, that you're allowed to ask these things, and even just to ask for more clarity, or that that's okay.
Absolutely. You're not taking away their free will.
No.
By making that request.
No.
When we were talking about strong emotions, when animals are lost, and when I've only done a few lost animal cases, and some animal communicators will not do them.
Okay.
Because there's so much emotion and attachment, and it's so hard for people to allow and to let go. And then the animal has their own free will as well. There are animals that don't want to be found, or they want to transition out on their own. It's very interesting and complicated, and the lost and found idea.
Yeah, and this is a thing. It is quite a big issue. I think that animals feel like they have to look after our feelings, and because I feel that they do. For them, leaving their body isn't such a big deal, and they don't have this kind of fear of death that we have as humans. And I think they often do feel quite a burden, so often they will leave when, say when their owner's away on holiday, or just when they get a little bit of, a bit of time or a bit of space from that relationship. So sometimes I would say to people, just, one of the gifts you can give an animal is just to allow them to be free to leave. And I think if somebody's ready for that, as an owner, that is powerful for them.
Yeah, and we see that with people too, allowing, when people say, "Oh, I told my grandmother it was okay to go and she went." But we don't always say that to our animals, because a lot of times it's never okay. We never want them to leave. So it's hard to say that.
That's so true.
But the gift is when they do.
It's hard. You have to. It's unselfish.
The gift is when they then give us gifts afterwards, a dream or a message.
Yes.
The best.
Yeah. I remember one time I had a pony. We had a pony in our herd who was a little, what was she now? A Dale's pony, I think. No, she was a fell pony, and she, not that really matters, but she had she came from a riding school, and she was quite shut down, and she lived in our herd for quite a long time, and she was always very shy, a shy personality. And she did have something fundamentally wrong in her pelvis and her back. So we used to do a lot of classical dressage, very holistic. We were always focusing on our posture, and she enjoyed the work, and I don't, but it was quite challenging for her because of her pelvis and her spine. So I remember one time when I was riding her, we just broke through to this incredible trot. It was like she transcended her body for a moment. And I remember, and I could just feel her just thinking, it wasn't really a thought. It was just a sort of realization that she had, this is what I want. This is who I want to be, or how I want to be able to move. And I didn't add this all up at the time, obviously, but then quite soon after that, she just became, very suddenly, she stopped eating, and it was so quick. And she said to me, and this was really hard at the time, because you know what, there's a lot of pressure and to go down the conventional route and everything. But she said to me, I don't want any intervention. This is my process. I don't want you to, I don't want vets. I don't want anybody fiddling with me. I just want to go through this. And so she stopped eating, and it was only like another day. She did have a fever, and I felt, with the energy work I did, I felt like she had kind of inflammation in her, maybe like a kind of meningitis type thing, but she didn't have a lot of symptoms. She was quite normal. The only thing she had was that she couldn't eat. There was something about, she just couldn't eat. And it wasn't lockjaw or anything. It wasn't anything obvious at all. There was really very little symptom. And then the next day I woke up, and I just knew, I felt it in my heart. I was absolutely terrified. I felt her heart's exploded. I just felt it. I just felt that she was gone. And I ran down. In fact, I think maybe someone else we found her, and she was just very neatly in, just because we had brought her in. That was when we still had stables and put horses in stables and things. And she'd just lain down and died. And because it was such a shock, like we'd never had that before, we did actually get her body autopsied. And they said that she had a stroke, and they couldn't find a reason why she would have had a stroke. They said it could have been like worm damage and it would have had to have been years ago, because she didn't have any worms in her actual body or anything.
Sure.
So she'd just gone. And so I was pretty, it was traumatic, because I felt, oh my God, I didn't do anything. I didn't get the vet. She didn't want me to. And I very much doubt they would have been able to do anything about it, because it wasn't, I don't think whatever it was bacterial. Anyway, she came back to me.
How old was she?
Quite old. Probably maybe in her.
And what was her name?
Meg. So anyway, she came back to me
So she came?
Yeah, she came to me in spirit, because I was so upset, I think, and it's happened to me since, but I think this was the first time maybe that I experienced that, and it was so strong, so powerful. And she came back, and she was so joyful. I mean, she was just joy, like this incredible joy. And she reminded me of that trot and how she transcended her body. And she said, she just showed me I just couldn't be in that body anymore. I had to expand into this new being. And she also, it was amazing, because it was like a really long sort of, it was almost like watching a film with her. But she showed me, she said, that's the first time that I've been able to choose to leave my body, myself, that I've had the choice, that I've had the control And then she showed me, and I probably thought at the time, my God, you're making this all up, but she showed me really powerful images of like one time she was in a ship and the ship went down and she was drowned. And another time she was in a carriage going over a bridge, like Black Beauty, and the bridge collapsed and she died there. And like all these deaths where she had no control. And it was like, wow. And this was her death that she decided, and she'd done it herself. And it was like, wow. It was like,
so powerful.
Yeah, I mean, it really was. And I haven't thought about that for a while because it was.
I mean, this soul.
Yeah, go on.
Talk about soul connection and being the conduit for her to complete full circle, complete from all these past lives.
Yeah.
To complete her wish and her soul's wish for her body to go in a way she wanted.
Yeah.
And when you were first telling me the story about the trot, what I heard in my mind was, this will not be my story. Like, my story is not the horse with the hurt pelvis.
Yes. Wow. Yeah.
This is my story. I'm the trotting horse. And that's what I felt around that, what that was about. And the power to make our own choice around our death, us as people or animals, is amazing. Like, that is so powerful. Death is so, and I'm not saying any death is less spiritual or less powerful than another. I don't want to make it sound that way, but I feel like there are deaths that that were more empowered as a sentient being, and she was so empowered in that beautiful death that she had. And it's just beautiful that you could. Yeah, I mean, you're upset. You were upset, and of course, there's grief. You're a human being, but it's so beautiful that she gave you that gift of healing. Like, try not to be in anxiety about because guilt is so much a part of grief. I find that a lot especially with the death of animals. It's really normal for us, no matter how spiritual we are, to feel guilty. Like, like, I did this. It's just something because we're their guardians. And so we feel so responsible, like it's my fault, even though we knew we needed to put them down. Yeah. But it's still, I killed them. I killed my horse when I put him down. And but I feel like that's just human nature. It's just the part of grief. And as you said, the animals look at it differently. They're not sitting around going, if I'd stepped in front of my friend before he got hit by the truck, he wouldn't have died. Like. I mean, they feel grief, but they're not going to sitting around feeling. They feel grief, obviously, but they don't feel guilt around it.
Like responsibility. Yeah. I'm just realizing, because I just remembered when I said that story that the guilt was horrible.
That's normal.
Like when she died, and I think now, because I don't feel that anymore, and I think that really helped me to just resolve that, because I had really forgotten I just felt sick that I had listened to her, and I think that's what that gave me. Like, I felt like, it was the right thing to do, but it at the time it really felt so challenging. So
I mean, that was her gift to you, and to make you feel stronger about your own intuition and your own energy work and your own animal communication. Just like the death of Floyd, he gave me that more belief in myself and these things that I can do and that we all can do. I've had a horse, the guardian was asking, my horse has been depressed since his herd mate passed away. I'm so concerned. And he was able to say to me, in the spring, I'll feel better. So he had his own timetable of when he knew his grief would be better. And true enough, she was back in touch with me. Oh, it's springtime, and my horse is more happy,
That's amazing.
and so it's like um, they know how to take care of themselves, and so but what happens, I believe, is that this is what I believe. I believe that sometimes we send them so much of the message, you're depressed, you're in grief, you're depressed, you're in grief, that sometimes it keeps them in that space longer, because they hear us or see our thoughts. If we always are having the image, oh, I'm going to go see Johnny, and Johnny's going to be sad about his, herd mate, it makes it, because they want to please us. And so they don't necessarily differentiate between,
absolutely,
okay, they don't sit there and analyze and go, well, she's thinking that because she's programmed to think that one day I'm sad, so I'm going to be sad the next, and grief takes this long. They don't think like that. They just think, oh, I guess I'm supposed to be sad.
That is so true.
But what I loved about Meg was, like, even if other people, and I'm not saying you did this, but even though there was an awareness of her pain by others that might have had those thoughts, well, we got to do this or that because she has pain. Even though she was hearing those thoughts, she was able to transcend that and say that day when she trotted, this will not be my story. This is my story. I'm this trotting, healthy horse. Boom. Remember me like that? That's who I am.
Yeah.
Which is so amazing. What an amazing horse. Or pony, right, Meg? Yeah, ponies. Ponies can be so tenacious and willful.
Yeah.
And we learn so much.
Oh, they are. We really do. Yeah, ponies are
they're so fun.
They really are almost like a different species, aren't they? Because they're just so independent, and they've just got that ability to think for themselves, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And they can be funny. I had this one pony maybe this was a miniature horse. This one miniature horse that I did a communication with, she reminded me of a pony because she was real. She was real, like, funny and independent. It's like her name was Rocket. She was like a rocket. She was real sparky, and like she made a joke in the communication. One of her paddock mate had passed away, and so the guardian wanted me to talk to her about that.
Right.
And she called her mate her pen pal. And I just wrote it. I just wrote, yeah, my pen pal.
Wow.
And I just wrote it. And when I'm like writing things, I don't really think about it so much, except for that I want the person to get what they need. So I want to make sure I get the questions answered as much as I can. So later when I read it, I was like, pen pal. And then I was like, pen, like a paddock is a pen. And then it made me laugh because it was like a joke. It's like she made a joke. You know, because a pen pal is someone you write back and forth with, right?
That's so
but
funny.
Instead of paddock, herd partner, or herd mate, it was pen pal. But she was making a joke. It was just her personality.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like we can't limit what they're going to say and what they're going to come up with. You know, any animal, but.
And do you think they really understand the words like that?
Well, it's like we were talking. It's the energy, and there's a higher intelligence. So, like, we can think about, okay, well, that horse never studied Latin. That horse never studied,
that's so true.
Grammar, or that horse never studied definitions of words. But because it's energy, they're able to grab that meaning or that word from the universal source and say it, because they're like, that particular horse was meant to bring laughter, was meant to be a goofball.
Yes.
And so that goofball personality
that makes such sense.
is able to grab the word pen pal, which more than likely was never said in front of that horse, or maybe it was, but you can't imagine someone being at the barn and talking about their pen pal, so even though he didn't, that horse didn't necessarily hear that word, like the animals, they're pressing the buttons now, and they hear those words. No, this is a different source of information for that animal.
Yeah.
And it's meant to fulfill their purpose of that particular horse of being a clown, being a stand-up comic.
Yeah. It's a good reminder that everything's energy, isn't it?
And for us too, like
everything has an energetic root.
Maybe we have answers to our own questions in life that we never read about in a book, right? But if we can just open ourselves up to our soul's purpose of who we are and what we are in the world to give, all of a sudden you've downloaded something that is a word.
Yeah.
I've had that happen. Anyway, I won't get into those things, but it's so nice.
Oh, but I wanted to say, what you said about how horses can absorb or we can project things onto them. I think that is so true because, I've noticed recently that, and I would say in the last maybe 5 years or so, or 4 years to be, that my horses are so just healthy, they're just always healthy and shiny and happy. And it's like, and then I realized, well, you're not always looking for something to fix with them anymore.
Beautiful.
Like it used to be that there was this whole thing that, like it's a kind of habit you get into a little bit that you're always healing them or saving them or, even training them. And maybe you don't have to, you can move beyond the concept of training, but just that there's always something to fix. And then, so of course they're going to embody that for you. So it's, it's a big power to have that.
Absolutely.
That we can, if we let them, they can just be healthy.
Absolutely.
But then I think for some people, they just, they're not really ready for that. Maybe
that's their story, and they need to have they need to have that story. The person needs to have the story. Oh, I'm a victim. Oh, my horse is a victim. Oh, there's always problems. Oh, I'm always spending money. This needs to be my story. And I'm not saying anyone's wrong. If anyone hearing this has a situation where they're suffering because of their horse, I'm not blaming you. I'm just saying it's easy for us to get into these
habits.
I'm going to just call them habits, but even with other people.
Yeah.
Oh, my loved one, how's your back every day? How's your back? How's your back? Well, you never give that person with the sore back room to not have the sore back. Or we're looking at a horse. Oh, you poor thing. Oh, and then they're like, yeah, I guess I'm a poor thing. Unless at a rare time they have this willpower and tenacity, like your pony did. And their soul is just like, no, I am going to do it my way this time in this life. And I have the perfect person to do this with, and everything's lined up. It's always possible to transcend our limitations and our limitations with our animals. There's always that possibility.
And I think we don't often realize how powerful it is to believe, to do the opposite, to say, to really believe in, to see good everywhere and good in people. And, even if the actual reality is pointing a different way, if you just decide you're going to see the good and you're going to see health and you're going to see, it really does manifest. I mean, it's incredible, the power of that.
Yeah, it just takes, I believe it, and I'm not saying I'm there completely or anything, but in my experience, it takes practice, in whatever way you come to that. I'm not going to say there's one way or another, but it definitely takes practice, because it's like the old saying about the monkey mind, it's there. And then of course we have experiences, and animals have experiences of, things like PTSD, from past experiences. And sometimes that loop, that gamma loop in the brain just keeps going. And those are the cases where, have a horse that keeps biting and keeps kicking and just doesn't stop, even when it's in a very positive environment, even when it's around holistic people. And sometimes,
Yeah.
Sometimes there are those cases. So it's tricky because I've seen people say, oh, if you get bit or kicked, it's because of your own energy. Well, once in a while, it's that trauma was so strong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So there's always, I just want to leave room for, for that, you can have a very traumatized
because
horse.
it's easy to get judgmental.
Exactly. And that's just as bad. I mean, that's...
Yeah, it is. I think that's really, it's one of the great issues, isn't it? Especially in the horse world, because people become so judgmental. And I think I was talking to someone about that the other day. Like, when you've got a lot of experience, then you kind of, you think that you know how to do things and how to tell people what to, and that what's the right path. And then you forget that you had to go through you had your mistakes and you made your mistakes, and that's why you became what you are now. And also it's all confused a little bit by the fact that you tend to get what you expect. So you might have 50 years experience, but if you expect things to be a certain way, then you're creating that every time. So yeah, it's a bit complicated. Any form of judgment really is it's like the wrong branch of the tree. I think you have to go from judgment back to observation, back to neutrality. And then I think you have to actually move into just knowing that there's the best case, that this, whatever it is that you're looking at, has this source reality. And that if you can, and I'm not saying that, I'm not saying I do, I would say that I know that, but the actual implementation of it is still in, it's a work in progress for sure.
Of course.
But it is like several steps back. I think when you get to judgment, you're just in the wrong place, really. You're not in alignment.
I mean, if you see abuse, obviously you're not going to hold back on judging that. If it's clear-cut abuse. If it's things like, I wouldn't do things that way, well, sometimes you got to let go. Okay, it's the karma of this particular animal or this horse that somehow it's with this person that's doing the things this way. Ultimately, they're not being abused, but it could be better. So, but I think that the horse world, yes, can be very judgy, and it can be very, I want to say the word insensitive.
Yeah.
But to be fair, they do weigh 7, 8, 9,000 pounds. So, they're so the world around horses has been, as we know, around dominating them so that we don't get hurt, so that they serve us and all of that. And so I think there becomes, and I'm going to use the word macho, but it's not, doesn't mean just men, but there can be a little bit of a macho energy of like,
definitely.
Well, and weird stuff too. Like, okay, you're not dressed a certain way. You're wearing white at horses. You must not be a horse person, or, weird stuff. There's all that weird stuff, of course.
Yeah.
But, if we know what the truth is around that these are souls and that they're real sentient beings that don't necessarily need to be dominated as much as to the extreme that society has placed upon them. I mean, you have to be safe, but obviously, but yeah, I think it's a little tricky, the world of, I saw this, I don't know why I'm saying this, but it's just making me think of this thing I saw the other day. I saw this, thing on Facebook or something the other day, and this video, and it was a man, and he was feeding alligators, live, wild alligators, but he was doing it like they were horses. He'd go, "Ho!" And I'm like, "That's not a horse." It's not a horse. It's not.
Oh,
It's
that's
saying
funny.
ho because it sees you're going to throw it. It's fish.
Yeah.
But anyway, it just was funny because I was like, it just reminded me. Okay, that he must have been a horse person at some point in his life. But anyway,
Yeah. But you know, that reminds me of that I realized that I've changed because the other day, um, one of the horses, one of my I've got one who's quite a tall. She's a big lanky. Not she's not super young anymore, but they were having a gallop, and she ran up this um, concrete sort of slip thing we have. It's like where we drive out with the tractor, and she wanted to jump off at the top, and it wouldn't have been a good idea. And I just I put a video on it of it on Instagram actually because it was quite funny. But I just asked her to come back and not jump off. And after a few minutes of deliberating, she listened and came. But I realized afterwards that I did it by, and I just naturally did it by just asking her to come, like you would with a dog. And I realized I really have changed because I used to be more in the traditional way of driving, like pushing away, like you push horses away to make them do what you want them to do. And that didn't cross my mind at all with her because I've never really done that with her because she was in a way the first horse who said, no, we're doing it different. Or don't, I don't push away like that. We're not driving. You're not driving me away. And she responded to that, to the invitation
beautiful.
really nicely. And I just think that there are some fundamental ways, traditions that we have that we just think are how it is because they're horses. And I think that's my whole thing, actually, that we can just rethink all of that or re-feel all of that and have a completely different. The other one, just while we're on the subject, the other one it's an ongoing process, but I just realized that when we ride horses, they're not really, this is just words that came to me, but they're not really alive as they could be if they were. So imagine that they were the ones in charge. Like imagine it was them saying, come for a ride on me and we'll go somewhere and I'll take you and I'll show you. And it would be like they were alive. It's the best word that seems to just fit the idea of it. Because I was actually riding at the time one of my the liveries here, horses, borders, you say in America, and he's a lovely horse and he's so accepting and willing and he enjoys being ridden, but he didn't have that. So that's what I've been doing a little bit with him when I've been riding him, just kind of feeling him and bringing him alive. And it's something that I've been doing with my herd, that they actually,
Sure.
yeah, that they actually will come and invite, and they have done it, invite me to ride them. And it's just a completely different paradigm. And it's possible, I think we can start like allowing ourselves that there are these new possibilities and that it doesn't always have to be like it was, just like you say, because it started, we got into these habits because they are big, powerful animals, and we maybe don't believe that they could be, that they could, be like that because we don't have enough communication on that level to be able to.
Well, again, it comes back to respect, and the words that you use,
Yes.
invite. I'm inviting you not to jump off. Yes, I prefer not the vet pills and the pain, but I'm inviting you,
Yeah.
and then they can use their own choice, and you're giving their own, free will. But you're in the word inviting, and again, it's in everything that I feel like I do with animals. It really comes down to respect, and but the words that you use, feel, it's about feel, yeah, and I think that the traditional horse world is coming around to some extent to these things. Obviously, with the bitless
Yeah.
bridles and
Yeah.
all of so many nice holistic modalities. So yeah, I think that it's coming around. But yeah, I'm lucky personally because I grew up riding wild. Like I started off working at a pony ring. I sort of mentioned my family earlier. It was really dysfunctional, and I when I was a child, and I went to a pony ring just to space out.
Right.
And I got hired at 11 years old to work at a pony ring.
Oh, wow.
So I learned how to trim, not trim, but clean feed and brush and herd them.
Yeah.
So we would always ride no shoes on, me no shoes, them no shoes, the ponies, no
Wow,
saddles.
I love that.
And we would just, I would work at the pony ring, but then when we did rides, we just rode free, no saddle. At that time, we had bits, it's like 1971.
Yeah.
So we definitely had bits in their mouths, but we would go, this was in South Florida, and there was a Seminole Indian reservation, and we were able to ride on this white sand with all these ponds.
Wow.
And that's my favorite memory.
Amazing.
And that's why after being a single mom and putting my daughter through college, I was always in the back of my mind, I've got to get back to horses, because that's where I felt free to just let the reins go, be no saddle, and just allow the movement of the horse. And so I feel fortunate that was my background, because now I feel like I don't have all of that traditional heaviness on me, in a sense. And it's not like I'm not competing. I'm not like athletic. I do trail riding when I do ride, and I don't ride very often. Yeah. It's more about doing holistic stuff with the horses when I'm with the horses. But I'm just saying I'm glad that I don't have to have that. It's almost like a burden in a sense. I mean, it's great to have knowledge, of course, traditional knowledge, nothing wrong with it. But that was my memory of freedom in my life. That's freedom, being with the horse, being on a horse's back, or walking with a horse and having no agenda. It's the best feeling. And when you were saying that, I was like, I know you've done this. I know you. And then you said, yeah, I do this. I've done this. I let them choose, and then we do this together.